Pakistan by Dr. Mahbub al-Haq, but Science, Technology and Innovation for Human Development. And I think we have to learn maybe from this session what more can be done in Pakistan, because although Pakistan has taken many, many great steps, as I think we'll hear from our lecturer, by most global measures it's in fact one of the lowest countries when you measure international innovation and patents. And if you also look at various measures of development and human development, although poverty has reduced, there's many other issues that remain. So with that, maybe I introduce Professor Atur Rahman, who obtained his PhD in organic chemistry from Cambridge University in 1968. He has more than 1,000 publications in several fields of organic chemistry, including 753 research publications, 37 international patents, 69 chapters in books, and 221 books published largely by the major US and European press. In fact, so Pakistan's low number of patents is not because of him. He's done his share. He's editor of the world's leading encyclopedic series of volumes on natural products, studies in natural product chemistry, 52 volumes of which have been published under his editorship during the last 2 decades. 82 students have completed their PhDs under his supervision. I'm not going to go through his whole qualifications because it runs for about 4 pages here, but just also to emphasize from the UN perspective that he was the first scientist from the Muslim world to have won the prestigious UNESCO Science Prize in 1999, and that's in the 35-year history of the prize. He also was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society of London in July 2006 and has honorary doctorates including the honorary doctorate from the King of Malaysia, University of Technology in Mara. I'll just mention that. I won't mention the others as I'm a little bit Malaysian myself. If you live in a country for 4 years, that becomes part of your soul as well. So Professor Atur Rahman, I look very much forward to your lecture.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. A very good morning to all of you. I'm delighted to be here at PIDE, and I recall that I worked very closely with PIDE back around 2004, 2005, 2006, when we created a 320-page roadmap for Pakistan's roadmap for socio-economic development. It was a foresight exercise which was approved by the cabinet on 30th August 2007, and I recall the late Dr. A.R. Kamal, who we worked together, and Rehana Saiba, and there were others who we closely interacted with. So it's good to be here and to be talking to you about science, technology and innovation for socio-economic development. So I'll divide my talk into 4 parts. One is the world today, how knowledge has become the key driver for socio-economic development, and how natural resources have diminishing importance. I'll talk about disruptive innovations and how the whole scenario of industries is now changing through innovations, and I'll give you a few examples of a few fields of how things are being transformed. I'll then tell you a little bit about what we try to do in the higher education sector when I was the chairman of HEC. And if I have time, I'll then quickly show you some slides about my research center, which is my first love. There are about 600 students doing PhD there in organic chemistry, biochemistry, pharmacology, genomics, etc. So, as I said, it's knowledge now which is the key driver for development. And whether it's large countries like China or small countries like Singapore, the lesson is the same. Our real wealth is our children. You, dear children, are the wealth of this country. And those countries, those leaderships which have realized that their real potential lies in unleashing the creative potential that is within their young, those are the ones which have marched forward, be it China or Singapore or others. And so it is really the triple helix, the overlap between universities and academic institutions on the one hand, the industry on the other, and the third partner, government policies and the enabling environment that can be created It is this dynamic interaction that then leads to socio-economic development. And I must say that we must talk of inclusive and sustainable socio-economic development, because we very easily get carried away by GDP and by figures, and where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So the chairman just mentioned Singapore, small country, population just about 1/4 of Karachi, 5.5 million. Do you know exports last year? $330 billion US. 330 Arab dollar, with almost no natural resources. Pakistan's exports, $21 billion. How is it that Singapore's exports are 15 times or 16 times greater than those of Pakistan? The reason is knowledge and focusing on education, on science, and on innovation. And this is what happened in Singapore, this slide. The blue line is GDP per capita in Singapore. The red line is United Kingdom, and the green line is the world average. So in the mid-1990s, Singapore overtook the UK, and today has a much higher per capita income as compared to Germany or France or Sweden or many of these advanced countries through investments. Let's turn to China. This is a very interesting slide. It tells in one slide the story of China and how it has been transformed. The first column is the years. So if you go down, and the second column shows China, how it started sending students to top universities abroad, starting from 860 students in 1978, going up to about 573,000 students in 2015. 5 lakh students. Now about 550,000 students every year. And every year they have more than 400,000. In that particular year, there were 409,000 students who returned after completing their doctorate or postdoctoral training at top institutions in the world, USA and other places. And they are being clustered. Centers of excellence are emerging around them. And 2 years ago, China overtook the United States in the largest number of international publications, for instance, in nanotechnology. Look at Korea and other countries. Some of the other countries, the story is the same. They have transformed themselves from low value-added agricultural economies to high value-added agricultural economies. I was lucky to get the highest civil award from Austria a few years ago. And the Austrian president introduced me to his Minister of Science and Technology. And he said, look, this is my Minister of Science and Technology. He's also my Minister for Economic Affairs. He's also my Deputy Prime Minister. So they have raised the rank of their Minister of Science and Technology to the status of a Deputy Prime Minister. Korea has done the same. Their Minister of Science has the status, and Education has the status of a Deputy Prime Minister, so that they have the political clout to give the necessary high priority needed for education and for science. So this slide, I'm not sure whether you can see it from a distance, but basically what it shows is what has happened in the last 50 years. This slide tells you how the world has changed in the last 50 years. The two bottom lines are natural resources and low technology goods. The two top lines are medium and high technology goods. So the name of the game is high technology. That's where the big money lies. Pakistan's tragedy is that 60% of our industry is textiles, which occupies only about 6% of the world market. We are not there in the 94% of the world market, which is engineering goods, pharmaceuticals, biotech products, new materials, etc., etc., etc. We're just not there. And so let me now turn to a little bit about what we tried to do in Pakistan. When I was appointed, I'm a professor of organic chemistry, as you've just heard, and I'm based in Karachi in my research center. So I persuaded President Musharraf at the time to give a significant increase in funds for higher education and for science. So we ended up with a 6,000% increase in the development budget for science and technology, and later a 3,500% increase for the development budget for higher education. because while the finance minister thought we should go out asking for money from other countries, I refused to do that. I said, no, these are our children. We have to put our money in our children. We don't want to go out and borrowing funds for education. It is our, unfortunately, I was not responsible for lower level education, which was equally, if not even more important, and there was nothing I could do there. But I tried to do a little bit in the higher education sector. And so we took several key steps. Universities are not about beautiful buildings, they're about beautiful minds. The key for quality of a university is the quality of its faculty. So what you have to focus on is developing a high quality faculty. So we sent about 11,000 students abroad to top universities across the world. And then to attract them back, we tried to create an enabling environment. Who doesn't want to come back to their own country? Your parents are here, your brothers and sisters here, everybody wants to come back. But you must create the necessary legal bond se kaam nahi chalta. You have to create the environment so that they can come back and lead a fruitful life in the sense that they would like to contribute. So we changed the salary structures. At that time, the salary of a full professor became about 4 to 5 times the salary of a federal minister in the government. 4 to 5 times the salary of a federal minister in the government. But paying weak people high salaries would have been just a disaster. So what we said was a contractual system of appointment was brought in. First international evaluation after 3 years, then a second international evaluation after 6 years, etc. Every student who was coming back had access to a $100,000 research grant. A $100,000 research grant for every returning student. He or she could apply 1 year before they were coming back. So of course everything would go through a peer review, and so there were a large number of students who had excellent grants. Even when they were coming back to weak universities in Balochistan or wherever, they would have sizable research grants. We created a digital library which provided access to literature. If you walked into a normal library back in 2002, you wouldn't have found most of the normal latest journals. Through the digital library, the PERN program, every student had access to 65,000 textbooks from 220 international publishers and some 25,000 international journals with back volumes, and that is still there today. A novel scheme that we came up with, and I believe that we were the first in the world, was open access instrumentation. You would have heard of open access journals. Pakistan was probably the first country to have an open access instrumentation. What does that mean? It means that any researcher in any institution in Pakistan could send his samples to any institution of his choice. The analysis would be done within 72 hours, free of charge for the researcher. The institution providing the analysis would create a bill which will go to the HEC for payment. So, but the researcher himself or herself would not suffer कि हम ये नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि हमारे पास वो नहीं है. You know, and we then made sure that you had jobs in arrival. So we had a matchmaking. So every single student who was sent abroad had placements at least 6 to 8 months before he or she returned. Result was, during my time, we had a 97.5% return rate of scholars who had been sent abroad. Even now it is about 90%, I'm told, although I haven't seen the statistics. We did a number of other things. For time reasons, I'm not going to go through it, including ranking of universities, ranking of scientists, tax reductions from 35% to 5%, plagiarism checks on all publications through introduction of Authenticate or Turnitin, foreign faculty linkages, about 50 linkages with British universities alone and many others with hundreds of other foreign universities. And the result was that the PhD output, this graph shows what happened. Pakistan was producing only about 100, 150 PhDs every year. Now we are producing about 1,500. But we insisted on quality because numbers without quality can be a disaster. The worst thing that you can do is to produce substandard PhDs. So we insisted that every thesis had to go to 2 or 3 foreign experts. And they had to evaluate it before the viva voce could be held. The research publication shot up. We were publishing about 700 or 800 papers in international journals. Last year, Pakistan published about 12,000 papers. So in international journals with impact factors. So I'm talking about internationally recognized journals. And a number of universities, by the time in 2008, when I resigned in protest when the previous government tried to stop the scholarships of our students, thousands of these who were forced to go out to mosques and other places begging for money because the government stopped their scholarships midway. So I resigned in protest as chairman HEC. By that time, we had several universities ranked by the Higher Education Times UK amongst the top 4 or 5, top 300 universities of the world, including Karachi University, NAST, UET, Lahore, and others. And there were a number of editorials, 4 by the world's leading journal, Nature, written about the transformation that had taken in Pakistan. That's a top science journal, and by other international agencies. I was also the Minister for IT. I was the Minister for Science and Technology, but I was also simultaneously Minister for Information Technology and Telecommunications. And we took a number of steps to promote IT. One of them was that I went down to Hong Kong to meet the CEO of Intel, who was going there for a conference, and I persuaded him to invest in training of school teachers, and some 75,000 school teachers have been trained by Intel free of charge for Pakistan. So that, and we also did a number of other things. For time, I won't go through them. But this article in New York Times, which came out in 2015, August 2015, stated that Pakistan is now ranked number 3 in the world in terms of freelance programmers, with about annual sales of about $850 million a year. And our IT exports have grown from $30 million back in the year 2002 now to about $3.2 billion US, so more than 100-fold expansion. One of the reasons for that was a 15-year tax holiday that we gave to the IT industry in 2002, which expired in 2016. Similarly, I was responsible for mobile telephony because that also came under my ministry at the time. And one of the reasons, there were only 300,000 mobile telephones back in 2001. I looked around. One of the reasons why it was not expanding was that the calls were too expensive. And the second was that you had to pay for receiving a call. So we introduced Uphone as a subsidiary of PTCL at much lower rates. And we introduced a system under which the calling party pays, not the call receiving party. क्योंकि आम आदमी घबराता था कि टेलीफोन उसका आ रहा है, पैसे मेरे जेब से जा रहे हैं. So there was a reluctance. So we switched that, and that led to a boom, and now we have about 160 million mobile phones in Pakistan. All this, and I've just sort of condensed this 8 years of work into just 5 or 7 minutes, led to India calling a special meeting about Pakistan. And on 22nd of July 2006, there was a presentation made by Professor C.N.R. Rao, the advisor to the Indian Prime Minister, on HEC and what we were doing in Pakistan. This was reported in Hindustan Times, a leading Indian daily, heading Pak Threat to Indian Science. And it talked about how Pakistan may soon join China in giving India a serious threat to science, etc., etc. So something good must have been happening in Pakistan if India was concerned. India then decided to close down its UGC and create an HEC-like organization. The head of HEC has the status of a federal minister, and he reports directly to the Prime Minister. It's not a subservient to any ministry, so it's an autonomous body. So India decided to follow the same as Pakistan had done. So it was approved by the cabinet to form this organization called National Commission for Higher Education and Research, NCHR, but it was not approved by Lok Sabha in their parliament, so in fact UGC still remains. Let me come to the third part of my talk, and this is the major part: how disruptive innovations are transforming economies. A world where truth is stranger than fiction. Every day brings 1,000 discoveries, often serendipitously, often by accident. And so scientists following their noses, going into uncharted waters and then stumbling upon something which is so exciting. The whole field of nanotechnology, for instance, has evolved like this, where certain scientists looking at how the chemistry of stars, how polycyanoacetylenes were formed, stumbled on buckyballs, Buckminster Fullerene, named after a famous architect, and hence the whole area of nanotechnology evolved. So let me just take you first about biotechnology and some of the aspects. A very exciting technique that has been developed just 3 years ago is a gene splicing technique. You can take a slice, it's a molecular scissors. You can take part of a gene of a plant and cut out, for instance, the portion which gives the aroma in mangoes and put it into rice, or a part which gives the taste into certain garam masalas and put it into vegetables or whatever. The sky is the limit. And you can start creating new types of plants with all sorts of properties. So this is an accurate and a very cheap technique, and this is one of the procedures that is being now used. Another huge development that has taken place, which is affecting the whole area of biotechnology, is the advent of quantum computing. These are hundreds of millions of times faster, and they'll be able to do rational drug design much better than we can do presently, because drug biology interaction is a highly complex process. So the same drug, when given to you, the same medicine given to you has a different reaction than when it is given to me. Often it's very different because genetically we are different. So now we are coming into an era of personalized medicine, and quantum computing will go in a big way. Ginkgo Bioworks, for instance, is a company which has been set up to manufacture synthetic rose oil, where numerous robots are mashing together batches of genes and producing rose oil in the laboratory. You don't need roses anymore. So whether it's tailoring of plant species, or whether it's development of golden rice, which has pro-vitamin A built in, children who used to die because of lack of vitamin A, thousands of lives are being saved because now you have pro-vitamin A built into the genetic structure of this special rice. Talking of mangoes, why is it that you get mangoes only in the summer and not in the winter? क्या वजह है कि आम सिर्फ गर्मियों में मिलते हैं, सर्दियों में क्यों नहीं मिलते? The reason is that there is a biological clock built into every plant. एक घड़ी है अल्लाह ताला ने, कुदरत ने डाल रखी है, which tells the plant when to flower, when to fruit. So there are a number of genes. One of them is the DET1 gene, and scientists have learned how to switch these genes on and off. So the time is coming when you will have vegetables, plants, fruits round the year. Similarly, gene therapy has been used against breast cancer. Some spider proteins have been modified and combined with firefly proteins, and these are now used by surgeons to detect cancer cells, because cancer cells start shining just like जुगनू जिस तरह चमकता है उसी तरह, just like fireflies. Malaria is now, work is going on controlling malaria by genetically modified mosquitoes, where the females cannot fly away after laying eggs, and so they cannot propagate malaria. FDA last year approved a genetically modified mosquito to combat the Zika virus. In China, they have produced genetically modified cows which produce milk which is similar to human milk. Huge advances in obesity, understanding the reasons for obesity, genetic and others, also coming out from the understanding of genetics. The whole process of aging. How do we age? After all, it's all chemistry, and many chemical reactions are reversible. Can we slow down the process of aging? Can we stop the process of aging? Can we reverse the process of aging? Well, the work of David Sinclair at the Harvard Medical School, he found that there are a number of molecules. Resveratrol, for instance, is one which is a natural compound. When given to mice which were about 3 years old, their body features changed, and they became like 1.5-year-old. So it actually reversed that process and made them young again. Another compound is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Of course, you can't live forever, but we expect that people will have longer, healthier lives. And it is expected that children being born today will have ages of about 120 years plus because of the advances that are taking place. In fact, average ages are increasing by about 3 months per year. On average, for the last 100 years. People are living about 20 or 25 years longer today than they used to live 100 years ago. But now this is going to change dramatically because of the recent advances. Metformin is a drug which FDA has already approved. It's used for diabetes, but it has been found that it has also anti-aging properties. And clinical testing on human beings started in February last year. Poliovirus has been re-engineered to treat cancer. And so viruses, new types of conversions of viruses are being used to treat various diseases. Craig Venter in the United States took a bacterium, threw out its DNA. DNA was synthesized in the laboratory with about 500 or so molecules linked together. and that made about a billion copies of itself. Is 3D printing around the corner in terms of human organs? Indeed it is. There are parts of human kidneys, livers, ears, and jawbones which have already been produced by 3D printing. So the field of medicine is going to be greatly impacted. Professor Yamanaka got the Nobel Prize for his work on stem cells. Stem cells promise to change the face of medicine as is going to be practiced tomorrow, so that you can repair damaged kidneys, hearts, etc. using stem cell technologies. If you come to my institute in Karachi, we have an excellent stem cell facility. This is part of a human kidney produced by 3D printing. You take the cells of the same human being, his own kidney cells, multiply them in a tank, put them into an inkjet-like sprayer, which sprays these cells layer by layer, and you can produce parts of a living kidney in this manner. Wearable kidney machines are being developed so that you don't have, people who have kidney failure, they don't have to go for dialysis anymore. You just wear it under your coat, and then it's a portable dialysis machine. Cut off the tail of a lizard, एक छुपकली की दुम काट दें, वापस grow हो जाती है. एक आदमी का हाथ काटें, cut off his hand, it doesn't grow back. Why not? Well, recently scientists have discovered that there are some microRNA switches present in some animals, like lizards, and they are responsible for regrowth of organs. So the whole field of regenerative medicine is very important, and now scientists are looking at, can we activate similar switches in human beings? Let's turn to another area, the biology-computer interface. And so this is one area that I have been involved in, the understanding of the molecular basis of thought. Thought, Asad Saab, I'd love to talk to you about this separately. Thoughts are not abstract. They are made of atoms and molecules. Memories are not abstract. Thoughts are touchable. They're made of atoms or molecules. Which atoms? Which molecules? So that's an area that has been of intense research, of interest, because it's one of the holy grails of science, understanding, because this is arguably, the human brain is arguably the most complex object in our universe. 100 billion neurons, each one talking to 10,000 neurons. So 100 billion times 10,000 synaptic connections. So we have published many papers in this area. And so we have proposed the mechanism of thought storage through hydrogen bonding. It's chemistry, so I won't talk about this or you'll all run away. But basically, those of you who are interested, 2 of my reviews have come out in the top neuroscience journals in USA in the last couple of years, and I'll be happy to pass these reviews on to you so you can try and understand what all this is about. But this work has led us to develop some very exciting anti-epileptic products. There's nothing known against epilepsy so far. The drugs available for epilepsy today are just as good or bad as they were 200 years ago, because we understand so little of the human brain. So looking at local medicinal plants, from one plant we have isolated a number of compounds, and the tubers of this plant are worn like a necklace, and they seem to help epileptic patients and suppress epileptic fits. So from Delphinium denudatum is the botanical name. We have carried out tests. We have a patch clamp facility in our institute where we can excite individual neurons with very weak currents, 10 to the minus 12th of an ampere, and simulate epilepsy. What happens in epilepsy is uncontrolled neuronal firing. So we can create that kind of behavior in the lab and then look at plant extracts or purified compounds, whether they can suppress that firing. And using this technology and condensing 10 years of work into just 1 minute, we have discovered these very interesting compounds which have been patented in the United States, are going clinical trials in Canada. They have passed through phase 1 and they are into phase 2 clinical trials. So out from the understanding, but there are many other barriers to understand the human brain and to understand the basis of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or some of the other diseases. So we synthesize many compounds. Talking of the human brain, now you can wear a cap or a device around your head and you can read thoughts and you can read commands. So a small computer, this gentleman there has a little device around his head, and he gives a mental command to the car, and you can drive cars through crowded streets just by thought control. Completely paralyzed people who cannot even move their fingers after a stroke can move wheelchairs fitted with a motor just by thought control. The blind can today see with their tongue. Actually, you don't see with your eyes. Eyes are only a mechanism for image transfer. You see with your brain. So this is a device which has been developed by a company called YCAB, W-I-C-A-B in Wisconsin, commercially available. You can buy it today. This lady has a little camera. देखें तो एक छोटा सा camera लगा हुआ है उसके glasses के ऊपर. And that takes in the image. In her hand is a lollipop-like device which has 400 sensors. So the moment she puts this device onto her tongue, the image is transferred through the nervous system of the tongue to the brain, restoring partial eyesight, so that she can differentiate between a knife and a fork and see the lift buttons. It's no longer necessary to have a lollipop-like device. You can also have an armband. This is also commercially available. So I've already talked about quantum computing and how they are changing. This is actually the whole area of artificial intelligence is coming up extremely fast. It's an area which is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it has huge potential for socio-economic development. It also poses a huge threat. It is thought that within the next 25 years, the computers would attain a state of so-called singularity. What that means is that they will become self-learning. They will develop their own consciousness, kind of consciousness in inverted commas, and they will be able to make their own decisions without human intervention. And many people have predicted that this may be the end of mankind, because us weaklings, there'll be no need for us anymore. So it's a double-edged sword, but it is already having an impact in many fields. For instance, Watson has developed a computer. I'll talk about that in a moment. But there are now, for instance, in the case of, you can analyze a criminal's genes, and if he has certain types of genes, then there's a much higher chance of his committing a crime, a 13 times higher chance of committing a crime. So the time is coming when you go for a job, they'll examine your blood and see whether you have the crime gene in you. So that's happening already. DARPA has developed these little flies or cockroaches or all sorts of insects fitted with cameras and sound systems, and they can be manipulated to sit on the wall of your army chief or your prime minister and send all the information to the UNDP office or to the American embassy within a matter of seconds. अगली दफ़ा मच्छर या मक्खी बैठे तो ज़रा एहतियात बरतिएगा. I was mentioning IBM has now, this is a commercial service that IBM is now offering. This is, it has two divisions, IBM Watson's health division and a legal division, a law division. The health division, you can go and get prescriptions for your disease very fast, very quick, in a matter of seconds. You put in what the problems are and out will come the recipes. And there was a competition last year between cancer specialists and Watson won hands down. If you have wrinkles in your face, you just put this cream on and the wrinkles will disappear in seconds. Sham ko aaye, wash them off and the wrinkles will reappear. So this is a wrinkle zapping cream. Why do you have to take so many pills every day? Why not one pill which will last you a month? Well, these are ultra-long drug delivery materials have been developed at MIT. These are polymeric gels. Paper, you don't have to cut trees anymore. You can now make paper from stones. I'll come to that later. But bulletproof paper has now been made, which is from nanotechnology, using nanocellulose. So it's light, it's absorbent, and it's bulletproof. And nanotechnology is a fascinating area. In the nanomedicines coming up, nanoelectronics, and a whole range of other things. Nanodiamonds are finding a whole range of applications. Amorphous metals are here, which are finding a host of industrial applications, much better than normal metals. Paper has been made from crushed stone, stone mixed with polymer. So फिर दरख्त काटने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. You don't have to cut trees anymore. The world's first 3D jet engine, Monash की बात हो रही थी आपसे, Australia में. This was produced a few years ago by Monash University, a 3D printed jet engine. Suits are available which make you jump 10 times higher and run 10 times faster if you wear them. Superflex suits, they are real. It's not just in films that you see them. Electronic textiles are here, dear ladies. You can change the design of your dress within a second. There are thousands of designs stored into your dress. And you're wearing green and you say, oh God, I'm tired of green, I want light purple. And you press a button and it changes, and thousands with different designs and flowers. Here, go back, look at the internet tonight, and you'll find thousands of companies making electronic textiles. You want to make an internet, you want to send an email, dupatta ka ek sura uthaiye and send it on from your dupatta. You want to make a telephone call, dupatte ka dusra sira uthaiye and make a telephone call from your dupatta. Here, this is the ebb textiles are here. So just like water ebbs slowly up and down, these change their colors slowly. So you go to a party wearing a maroon dress and come back wearing a black one because of these special threads that have been invented in ebb textiles. Let me turn, I have another 11 minutes, so I want to make sure that I keep to my time. I've got my clock in front of me. So energy, amazing developments in energy. For instance, solar cells with above 40% efficiency are already here. Special type of solar cells have been developed, photon-enhanced thermionic emission cells. These convert not only the light, but also the heat into electricity. Normal solar cells convert only the light. So these have above 50% efficiencies. This is a fascinating experiment going on in the south of France, the ITER project, which is to create mini suns, सूरज की तरह हम छोटे-छोटे सितारे दुनिया में पैदा करें. And this uses fusion technologies, fusing of deuterium and tritium, just like happens in the sun. सूरज में क्या हो रहा है? Hydrogen is fusing together to give you helium with outbursts of huge amounts of energy. So this is what they are trying to replicate, and they are now very much near the break-even point, how much energy you're putting in and how much you're getting out. Tesla, amazing developments. Within 10 to 15 years, most of these cars on the streets will be gone. They will be all electric. The shares of Tesla this year overtook the total value of shares of Tesla was greater this year than the value of shares of Ford. Ford was started in 1904. Tesla started in 2004. And yet Tesla has overtaken. So the CEO of Mercedes-Benz just a couple of months ago in a speech said, we are no longer afraid of other competitors like BMW and others. Our main fear is from Google's and Facebook and the likes, and artificial intelligence, of course. Hydrogen is coming in from water, but वो पानी वाली गाड़ी नहीं जो आपके हामिद मीर साहब ने दिखाई थी और आपके एक मिनिस्टर साहब चला रहे थे और मुझे टीवी पे आके कहना पड़ा था that it is absolute nonsense because you cannot create more energy from a system than you put in. That's O-level physics that everybody, school level child could know. But this is really a lot of very interesting work going on cleaving, catalytically cleaving water to create hydrogen and oxygen, and then use that hydrogen for energy. Cellulose, आपकी shirt is made of probably of cellulose, cotton, vegetables, all the grass is cellulose. Now scientists have been able to convert cellulose into butanol and isobutanol. And so what is so special about butanol? You can use it 100% in car engines, whereas in the case of ethanol, you can only go to about 25%. Gravity light has been developed. If you look very carefully at the bottom, there are two little threads. You may barely see them. They are these little ropes which are hanging. So you just take a bucket, put stones into that bucket, lift that bucket up, and as it descends slowly over an hour, it lights up a hut. So it's just, you can use it in remote areas of Africa and so on, where you don't have electricity, to just use it for lighting. So gravity light. Smart windows, you can paint your windows or put polymers and you can generate energy from there. And brain, as I said, is an exciting frontier in which we have been involved. This is a picture of a man through functional MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, who is taxing his brain, and these are alight, these areas that you see in orange, and it tells you what part of the human brain is being active. And in the case of schizophrenic patients, these areas on your right is the schizophrenic patient. Those areas are not able to light up. So schizophrenia and other diseases are being explored using MRI. And so the molecular basis of thought I've already mentioned, that we have disruptive innovations in education. This is an interesting book that I have come out with last year. This is a book without any formal text. Book without text. Well, it's a video book, actually. A Nobel laureate, Jean-Marie Lane from France at Strasbourg University wrote the foreword. What I put in, only the headings are in text. It covers the entire curriculum of organic chemistry, And within it, I put 300 video links to lectures by the world's leading professors at Stanford or MIT or Harvard and others. So you just click and start learning. These are free books that I'm distributing across the world, and they're already on the, if you see on the top, there is a label of Commonwealth of Learning. So I was a member of the Board of Governors of Commonwealth of Learning based in Vancouver, and this focuses on distance education. But these are for free distribution, and we have created another one on molecular biology. And if you are interested, Asasab, I could help you prepare a similar book in economics, or a similar way, a video book on economics with lectures from the world's top professors. If that interests you, I'd be happy to guide you to do that. So, another thing that we have done, which you students should be interested in, is there are lots of exciting courses available, which are MOOCs, massive open online courses. Problem is these are scattered, and often you get lost. So what we have done is, after permission from MIT, edX, Udacity, Coursera, Khan Academy, etc., we have downloaded them onto one website, built in a meta search engine, and you can then access these courses, school level, college level, university level, and arrange according to discipline and sub-disciplines, free of charge. The website address is given at the bottom, note it down, and you can go there and start learning today, and pass it on to your mother or your grandmother or your granddaughter or whoever you want. These are all free. So this is the soft face of Pakistan, and these are free. We are distributing them across the world, and this is a growing, we have just put in 1,500 Khan Academy courses dubbed in Urdu just last month. So इसमें school से लेके university level तक materials हैं, not just science, they include social sciences, economics, history, literature वगैरह. So this is something that you might also want to learn from. No registration, no payment. Similarly, we have a program for real-time interactive lectures. This is a program that I am supervising, lectures through video conferencing, delivered from the West, also from the East, from Japan and other countries, in real time. So there's a focal point in each public sector university, and we tell them which lecture will be held at what time, where, on what subject, so that they can inform the relevant departments. So there have been over 4,000 lectures, interactive. They can ask questions. Not just through video conferencing, also through webinars. So you can learn to do it on your computer. And we also have courses in German, French, Arabic, and others going on through webinars. Again, that's something that I am supervising. I'm setting up a number of foreign engineering universities that might interest you. These should start functioning, inshallah, by the end of next year. The Pakistan Italian University, with a consortium of some of the top engineering Italian universities, at the Lahore Knowledge Park will start operation next year, and the Pakistan Austrian University of Engineering, which will start in Haripur, Hazara, again with their degrees, their curriculum, their quality assurance, and both these will start. So our children will not have to go abroad to get quality education, they will be able to get it within Pakistan. We are discussing with the French, and I've just initiated possibility with the Honorable High Commissioner here for possibilities of having an Australian campus as well in Pakistan. I have 3 minutes left, so what I'll do is I'll just show you a quick slides of our institute in Karachi, which is my first love. That's what I've done all my life, and I continue to do even today. As I said, some 600 students doing PhD in organic chemistry, biochemistry, pharmacology, molecular medicine, genomics, proteomics, neuroscience, multidisciplinary, virology. We have a 120-bed hospital also as part of the institute for clinical trials on some of the medicinal things. And this was established by Professor Salim Uzma Siddiqui, late professor, very eminent scientist. And I'll just show you some color slides about this. I don't want to give any. So this is the original building of the so-called HEJ, Hussain Ibrahim Jamal Research Institute of Chemistry, named after the elder brother of Mr. Latif Ibrahim Jamal by the Hussain Ibrahim Jamal Foundation. Nadra Panjwani Sahiba gave a donation for which the Panjwani Center for Molecular Medicine was built. The Latif Ibrahim Jamal National Science Information Center, which is the focal point for distance education. And we have fantastic facilities. There are 13 superconducting NMR spectrometers. This is an 800 megahertz, which was installed a couple of years ago for structural biology work. We have 13 of these. There's no institute in India or China which can come even close to us under one roof, which has these kind of facilities. So we have the only helium liquefaction facility because these instruments work at -269 degrees centigrade, which is just 4 degrees above the absolute zero. So these are elder brothers of MRI. आप लोगों ने MRI तो सुना होगा जो medical scanning होती है. Here we are actually doing excitation of molecules. We have about 20 different mass spectrometers, each costing about 4-5 crores. जो NMR मैंने बताया था आपको शुरू, that cost about 17.5 crores. And so they work day and night. That's the most powerful laboratory in the region for this kind of work. And there are many mass spectrometers, X-ray crystallographs, neuroscience, immunology, pharmacology, stem cells, data searching, liquid helium plants. So I just want to stop here. I'll just take you to the last slide and just show you how far we have fallen behind. If you look at Cambridge University, I'm an honorary life fellow at King's College at Cambridge, and I spent 9 years at Cambridge University. 92 Nobel Prizes actually now from Cambridge University. 92. 32 Nobel Prizes from just one college of that university, Trinity College. Not one Nobel Prize so far in science in the Islamic world for work done within the Islamic world. हाँ 2 नोबेल प्राइजेस मिली हैं, लेकिन वो पाकिस्तान के बाहर, एक इजिप्शियन थे, एक पाकिस्तानी, अब्दुल सलाम तो आप जानते हैं, बट दैट वाज फॉर वर्क डन अब्रॉड. सो वी लिव इन द डार्कनेस ऑफ इग्नोरेंस, एंड इट्स टाइम दैट वी वोक अप and tapped into our real wealth, our children. So it's knowledge which is driving economies, and innovation is the name of the game. But for that we need a visionary leadership. It happened due to Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia. It happened due to General Park in Korea or Deng in China. You need a strong man with a vision and honest leadership, realizing that we have to invest in education, in science, and in innovation. And I am to the dot, sir. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khatamil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Professor Dr. Ataur Rahman Saab, UNDP executive, scholars sitting at the podium, teachers, students, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum. One thing I must tell Dr. Ataur Rahman Saab, since he was busy in his lecture not looking here and there, when he talked about the aging process, how to stop that, how to reverse aging, I could see smile on the faces of the ladies and happiness over there. Dr. Saab, a wonderful talk. I have picked up just a few points from the talk of Dr. Saab and would like to throw a couple of questions initially, first of all, to Dr. Saab. Dr. Saab, you talked about the area of synthetic biology, a bacterium, synthetic bacterium producing billion copies of itself. Yes, for studying their virulence, for studying the host-parasite relationship or the host-bacterium relationship, yes, these areas are very exciting. But doesn't that scare you? What if these are used as biological weapons there? What is going to happen then? You talked about the robotics and area. A group of researchers at Harvard University, they have got a swarm of about over 1,000 robots, and these robots, they interact with each other and do perform tasks which are given to them. And the idea of these driverless cars is also the same, where these cars are going to interact with each other on the road, obey the traffic rules, and take the people to their safely to their destinations. But isn't there a point of worry for all of us that can we give it in the hands of robots everything without any interference from the human beings? So these are some of the ethical issues which come to my mind when we talk about these disruptive innovations over there. Dr. Saab is the one who succeeded in changing the landscape of the universities across the country. I'm a witness of that. I have spent 35 years, total 35 years in the universities in Pakistan. I've seen the UGC's time. I've seen his era. I'm there even today. The landscape of the universities is changed. But today, I don't know, I am sure Dr. Saab will be equally worried when I go to the universities, to the new universities over there. In Pakistan, the problem is, to me it seems as if we are caught up in a vicious circle over there. We are increasing the access, but at the same time, we fail to meet the requirements of the quality over there. In Pakistan, in Pakistani universities, the PhD faculty is less than 30%. And in the new young universities, the situation is even worse. Under these circumstances, the rate at which the universities are increasing in number, that the government wants to take university to every district of the country. How can we cope up with this? This is a question in my mind, and this bothers me and disturbs me. Since I've gone to the new universities, I go to these new universities and do not find the PhD faculty, and faculty at the university level less than a PhD is never counted as a faculty at the university. So this is one point. The second point, Dr. Saab talked about a lot the knowledge economy. Yes, he has been stressing on that. He showed us the graphs and everything, how the tech products can take the socio-economic can play a role in the socio-economic uplift of the country over there. And only 5 minutes more, or total 5 minutes? 5 minutes more. 5 minutes more, okay. So I should click my clock there. So this is an area in which every one of us should think about that. How can we take Pakistan into the knowledge economy? One thing that I have understood from there, yes, of course, the institutions of higher learning are going to play a major role over there. Since 90% of research in this country is done in the universities in this country, as Dr. Saab showed in the graphs over there for us. But you need a very sustained investment for that. The problem here in our country is that we have got this stop and go kind of a situation. Dr. Saab himself mentioned that he had to resign in protest over there because the government stopped the grant in the form of scholarships to those students who were sent abroad. So this is one area, this sustained investment for at least 30 years without any shocks. If you give it to this country, this is going to sustain it and will take you, inshallah, to the knowledge economy over there. That's one thing that I have observed. Interdisciplinary approach is now the only way for Pakistan linkage between the academia and the industry. We have to work together, not only, as you mentioned, our institutions actively linking with the institutions abroad, but within our own institutions. The different fields, scientists from different fields, a physicist must work with the chemist, a chemist with the biologist, a biologist with a mathematician. They all should work. I have now established one institution Sahib, I will take you over there, inshallah, in a month's time. We are moving to a new place. It is a center for interdisciplinary research at International Islamic University, where I have gathered all these young scientists from different disciplines together, and they are addressing the issues so that they can resolve at least small problems of this country and can make a link with the industry in this country. One thing, since all economists are sitting over here, are industrial and the trade policies that must encourage local technology firms. This is extremely important. We need a policy, a friendly policy from the government to encourage these small industries, the products from these industries. If they are encouraged, they will be forced to come to the universities and make a linkage with the professors in art. But at the same time, we at the universities, we have to work hard. We have to establish kind of a trust for them. They should trust us, because now that trust is missing over there. Our industries, they don't trust us. We speak different languages.
I mean, it's really great to have Dr. Atar Rahman with us and having his insightful discussion on science, technology, and its importance for socioeconomic development. So, I mean, I will build on the same, premises that has been highlighted over here. But my most important concern is that how do nations innovate? So that's the important thing. We know the importance of science and technology, but the most difficult and crucial aspect is to engage the science, technology, and innovation in a way that your productive structures and the production systems in the country are going to evolve and going to make a kind of a concomitant or a co-evolution with the kind of technological developments those are happening in different contexts. So for that, I mean, the standard economics presents this triple helix model. That's the way, I mean, mostly if you look at the Korean experience and the Chinese experience, that they have simulationist to accumulationist kind of two different approaches are over there. So primarily you start with while having to imitate the technologies which are already available in the international market, and then going to you can say import some of that component, and then gradually build the absorptive capacity within the economy, and then so that at a certain time you yourself are going to be able to innovate in most of the contexts. But it is very difficult. You can say that it's not so easy to copy or to incorporate all these kind of things which have already been done by Korea or even China. So in this context, there is a very interesting paper by Hajun, Cambridge University professor, in 2006 that is about industrial policy in Korea. And interestingly, this paper main highlight is that all those countries which were fixated with the Washington consensus, that they were fixated to have this liberalization, deregulation, and then privatization, openness in context of capital and current account convertibility, and then putting more emphasis on the market mechanisms. So they are a failure in this context. But while those who have deviated from this prescription of the IMF and the World Bank, and they have opted for a very active industrial policy in their domestic context, so they have shown a lot of, you can say that, progress, and they have leapfrogged. So mostly the newly industrialized economies experience tells us that the starch-bearing role of the government is very much crucial. Without having this role, it's less likely that your private agents and the private sector itself is going to look at that what is good for them, what are the sunset and sunrise industries, and how to tackle with these dynamics, and what to choose and what not to choose. So because in industrial strategy, the most important thing is what not to do. I mean, there is a lot of concern that ye bhi kar lein, but so to put this bar that what we are not going to do is the most important thing. And in that context, Eric Reinhardt his thesis in 2007 highlights that getting the activities right rather than to put emphasis on getting the prices right. So that is going to give you this, you can say that impetus that you are going to opt the technology and science into your productive structures. And for that, R&D, research and development, is an important context. When we say that R&D, then of course there is this differentiation once again that how much is going to private sector is going to invest then and how much from the public sector. But initially, the first level investments are always offered by the governments. This is what the world experience shows. So now having this context, let's move to the Pakistani context, that where we are in the problem and where we are not able to succeed in this. Pakistan with Korea in 1960, Pakistan was $200 million worth of $1 million worth of exports to the international market, and the Korea was $2 million. And today, if you look at this, we are just struggling around $23 billion, and they have crossed the barrier of $700 billion, few years back. So in this context, the private sector development or the private sector is the major driver. But what are the problems with our private sector? There's the rent-seeking behavior is rampant. Then that's not the only problem, rather another allied problem is bureaucracy's mindset. That's the socialist mindset we have inherited mostly during the nationalization policy of 1970s, in which it is being considered that perhaps the profit making is a sin. But the same paper I have mentioned by Hajun, it highlights that whenever you are going to start something, it is an innovation. Whether it is not going to be an innovation from the world's viewpoint, but it is an innovation from the domestic industry viewpoint. And for all sort of innovations, you need certain Schumpeterian rents. So without creating those rents, it's less likely that private sector is going to get engaged. So, but unfortunately, in Pakistani settings, we think on the one side, this is what is the paradox of Pakistan economy. I call it as a paradox, and that is that on one side, the rent seeking is at rampant level. So there is no robust policy framework for any kind of investments in this country. So you need to have a kind of lobbying. If you have access to the ECC, that's Economic Coordination Council, you are going to get some kind of exemption from there. You are going to get some ISRO. So then you are as good as you have done some innovation into your productive structure. And then because that SRO or that exemption from the ECC is going to grant you certain kind of monopoly right, and on the basis of that monopoly right, you are going to manipulate and exploit the profits from the domestic market. And the same is being done by the innovations, by incorporating technology into your productive structures, because this technology or innovation gives you a momentary advantage over your competitors so that you can thrive in that context. But unfortunately, if the IPR framework is absent, that's intellectual property right framework is absent in any country, so then it's less likely then you can promote innovations, and particularly the kind of disruptive innovations Dr. Ataur Rahman has mentioned in his lecture. So over and above that, then we have informality in our economy to the extent that different studies show that 34% to 67% of the economy is informal. Then we are a factor-driven economy, yet even we could not get into the second phase, that's efficiency-driven phase, and that yet we are struggling. That Rostow stages that took off, we could never took off despite having a lot of kind of an aborted efforts in the past. So then entrepreneurial ecosystem, because that's the most important and crucial driver then in industrial development. So if you are not going to give way to your entrepreneurs to have these, and the SME is not going to be the major focus of the government policy, so then it's less likely that you can have the kind of disruptive innovations, because all these innovations, particularly disruptive, are being introduced by the small scale businesses in international context. Then university governance is the most crucial thing, and of course, Dr. Ataur Rahman deserves a lot of tribute in this regard to change the landscape of the higher education in Pakistan and bringing this change which we are witnessing today. And at the moment, HEC's budget is 44 billion rupees, and and I would like to commend SN Iqbal's efforts in this regard, that this has been increased from 29 billion last year to this level. But now there is a need, that the only money is not going to make wonders. Now there is a need to put emphasis on the university governance as well. Without having the shared governance model into the academic institutions, it's less likely that with this Georgetown model over where the Vice Chancellor is all in all, that we can bring in a lot of changes and excellence to our. So with this aspect, I would like to now highlight that according to this World Economic Forum report, that the creativity would be the most important trait that would be rewarded. And by 2030, roughly around 25 traits, jobs are going to be, or professions going to be dissipated just because of having this robotics and something, the kind of artificial intelligence revolution that is being perceived the way. So then, in this context, once again, the university and the university governance becomes very much important. But on the other aspects, I would like to say that there is this center of innovation, technology, and culture that was developed by Professor Jan Fagerberg in Oslo University. And I had the chance while I was doing my PhD to spend a couple of months over there. So, and that this center was putting emphasis that how to protect the domestic or the kind of culture and then the kind of norms and traditions of any particular economy while you are embracing the technology and innovations, because that becomes the most crucial aspect then look at. The kind of growth China, Korea, they have derived in their economic systems was not a kind of a growth that has given not only the improvement in living standards, but that has also created a lot of frustrations in the society. Suicide rate, divorce rate has increased in those economies. So in that context, we have, this is a caveat as well while we are embracing the science and technology for socio-economic development. And in this context, I would like to quote the last 1 minute. That my apologies to those who do not understand Urdu. Iqbal said that है दिल के लिए मौत मशीनों की हुकूमत, है दिल के लिए मौत मशीनों की हुकूमत, एहसास मुरव्वत को कुचल देते हैं हालात. So in this way with this.
As usual, the lecture of Dr. Ataur Rahman is always, I always learn from his lectures. It's full of knowledge. And it's important for all of us, particularly our youth, to benefit from the knowledge and experience of Dr. Ataur Rahman. After listening to the lecture and reading the paper, there were some questions in my mind. Of course, we can't discuss here, it's such a comprehensive lecture. Before that, I would like to say, it was not just India who abandoned this HEC type model, it was all the Bangladesh also. They had a problem like what should be the status of the HEC chairman. They did not agree with giving a ministerial status, and before they could decide upon it, there were problems with Pakistani HEC, so they just abandoned this idea of creating HEC in Bangladesh also. So this HEC was doing really great job, and the countries in the region were trying to replicate that model, but we lost that opportunity. Now, looking at this, reading the paper and listening to it, it really scares me. Why it scares me? A couple of reasons for that. Because when I was listening to it and I was reading the paper, I was thinking where we are. We are living in what you can say in an environment where we don't see what is happening outside. We don't want to follow or create that environment and those things which are taking the countries forward, and we are just living in our shell. So what is happening? Given the situation which has been highlighted by Dr. Ataur Rahman also, there is a frontier of technology, and that frontier of technology keeps on moving all the time. Now, is there any convergence? As economists, we are always talking about the convergence hypothesis, per capita income of the developing countries moving towards the developed countries, and the gap is losing. But the gap is widening. It's not reducing. One of the factors could be the importance of the technological changes which are happening in those countries where the per capita incomes are going at a much larger rate. And that is why I was scared that assuming we can create all these enabling environment to create the technologies which have been created today, but the technology frontier is moving. Whether our manpower, so we don't have to just think about create the manpower to produce the technology today, but what is the technology for tomorrow? So there should be an insight about the technology frontier, how it is moving, what would be the future direction of this technology which would be going towards that. Particularly for that, what we need to, Dr. Tauraman said, our youth, definitely we need to create capable youth which can use these technologies. But at the same time, we have to increase the capabilities of our R&D institutions. Before doing that study which we did with the HEC, we did another study for the Pakistan 2020 or 2010 program, which was like, for that we did a survey for, that was done for Planning Commission in fact. So it was that how to improve the technological capabilities of Pakistan, and we did the survey of R&D institutions, and the allocation today also are not very high, and at that same that time also there was less than 1% of GDP which was allocated. And okay, where is that 1% was going? In the wages and salaries of those workers who were, who were employed there. They were not going for the development expenditure which is needed to create new technologies. So maybe what Dr. Atar should also, you can say that there should be block money which should be allocated only for the technology creation development fund, not allocated, which cannot be utilized for the wages and salaries. So there should be like development and non-development fundings separated for R&D institutions. Like if you look at the example of our NIPG, which created high yield variety seeds, and we had this green revolution. After that, what has happened to NIPG? What is NIPG doing? Particularly if we take the example of green rice from Dr. Tauraman's presentation, maybe that's what we need immediately. And what is the capability of NIPG to do it, to adopt these things? What is, whether they can do it or not? So that also needs to be addressed, and whether there's a capability, and because most of the time, what is happening is the capable are brain drain, basically, which is happening. Even if we have people who can do these things, they don't find enough incentives here, and they move out. And it is not only that the people are moving out, we are also sending our brand names out. It is not that we are not creating any new technologies. Look at the example of Saga. Look at the example of this La Fabrica, all these industries, the brand names which are known in the world, and Pakistan was famous, Pakistan's main exports were these, and they are all moving out. So we are not just creating new technology, we are not able to maintain or retain our assets which we had in the earlier time period. So we really have to think about it, that how to retain it, and then how to create to move forward. And move forward at a very high rate. Maybe this role of NIPG in that case could be very important to, particularly given these climate change challenges which all the countries in the world are facing, that we really need to do this here. I think Dr. Yasin Zai, for example, was mentioning, I also wrote that there are also uses and misuses of technology. So we really have to think that when we adapt, how to create a balance. Okay, the dynamite was created, and there are uses and abuses of it. So it depends on us that how you use it, but we do have Nobel Prize after that. Second thing is the youth. Definitely we need to have this is not only the quality education which we need, definitely quality education, but what is required. Because we are not only we are investing in education, but also at the same time we have a mismatch, and that mismatch is resulting into higher unemployment rate among the educated youth. So how to deal with these issues that we produce quality manpower, but what is required in the country, given the infrastructure in the country, which is required. Definitely that is what would be critically important. In Dr. Ataur Rahman's paper, he has mentioned that the growth experience of Pakistan has been like changing and fluctuating very high, and definitely that leads to my question is like why? Because when we have high growth phases, what is it that we don't do during this high growth phase that we cannot retain that high growth phase? When the particular government ends, with that the growth story ends. What is it? That because what we are doing is we are not addressing the fundamental weaknesses in our system, in our structure. That's what we need to do. Then my last point, second last point is basically, and whenever we are making policies, basically what we need to have like education policy, we need to have science policy, we need to have R&D policy, we need to have all these policies in different dimensions, but all these policies are working independently. So, and if you look at all the policies, whenever we try to formulate it, the starting point does not change. Education, we still are starting with universal primary education. Why? What's happening? Why we haven't moved to the base does not change. That we have to move forward. That is the basic, I'm just finishing, the last point. Dr. Ataur Rahman said one point I did not agree so much with him is that natural resources are not important. Natural resources are important, critically important, because look at the Chinese growth rate. We are all appreciating, definitely they have invested in their youth, they have manpower, but what has happened? The copper and iron ore reserves, which were earlier global reserves, which were earlier estimated to last for 100 years, with the Chinese growth rate, the life has shortened, it's like 50 or 60 years now. So all this educated manpower and all that, we need those natural resources also to grow and in real sense. And the second thing is, of course, we have a debate on whether the natural resources are a curse or a blessing, but they are not, because they are natural resources, they are how we are using it. The governance issue again. That the governance issue we have to address to make those natural resources into blessing and have high growth rate with the high quality manpower and science and technology. Thank you very much.
I realize on the schedule it says that lunch is about to begin, but I think it's not very often we have a chance to have such good speakers, especially Dr. Ataur Rahman. And I'm going to invite him to give some concluding remarks and maybe response to the discussants for 5 minutes or so.
Sure.
Okay.
That's okay. Well, thank you very much. Firstly, Professor Yasin Zahi, he raised a very pertinent point about the dangers of technology, and I couldn't agree more. Technology is like a knife. You can use it to cut an apple or to cut a throat. It is who is using it that matters, and that's why a university education must produce well-rounded human beings with the milk of human kindness. In other words, social sciences, humanities, broad-based education is very important, not just science and engineering. And that is why during my time we introduced a 4 years bachelor's program instead of a 2 years bachelor's program, so that you produce. This is happening right now, whether it's robotics or genetics or whatever. Either you can turn your face away from it and say we'll ignore it, or you can dive deep into it, learn what is happening and use it for the betterment of humanity, and that is what my approach is. But we should be aware of the dangers that exist. How do we transition to a knowledge economy? Well, of course, the triple helix approach was mentioned by you also. One big missing hole in the Pakistan's efforts is that if you look at the public sector research and development versus private sector research and development, private sector research and development is less than 2% or even 1% of the total R&D expenditure that we are making. If you look at China, India, Korea, it goes up to 50, 60, 70%, or the United States or European countries. So we need to incentivize private sector R&D, and there are some number of mechanisms through which this incentivization can be made, so that we need, because that will be much more focused R&D relating to industrial products and processes. हमारे यहाँ है ही नहीं, it's absent, R&D under the private sector, and the government has never thought about mechanisms of incentivizing it. So that's very important. I happen to be the co-chairman of a UN Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, which covers 62 countries on the South and Central Asian Pacific region. And we have come forward with a roadmap trying to answer that very question. It's a detailed document, so that there are certain basic steps that each country must take, so that the linkages between university and industry, which you rightly mentioned, can be strengthened. And for that, the role of government policies in making that happen. You, sir, very rightly related that how do nations innovate? Well, innovation is a mindset, and the mindset is created right from the childhood of a person. So I believe that the school level education, home education, college education are very important, because that's where the mindset is made. Our school system is distorted. It encourages rote learning and reproduction rather than a questioning approach where you question everything. The printed word is often wrong, and you have to have this questioning mindset about everything. So we need to focus on our primary, secondary education and build the right foundation, so that our children are rightly prepared to go on into colleges and universities and then adopt research as a career. So this is, I think, vitally important. Madam, you pointed out that natural resources are very important. I totally agree with that. What I had stated was not that they are not important. What I said was they have diminishing importance in the overall economic framework of countries, whether it's Korea and so on. You see that they have migrated from largely agricultural growths to knowledge-based goods. So they have had diminishing importance. In fact, what we advocated in the document that we prepared together with PIDE was that agriculture had the highest rate of return, about 110% IRR. And so our approach was that the fastest way of growing for Pakistan was to invest in value-added agriculture, increase agriculture output, and then use that money to invest in other sectors. The problem with Pakistan has been the vision of successive governments. In planning, for instance, with due apologies to the Planning Commission, has innovation been on your radar? Every year when you come out with a national plan, where is science? I was talking to Sartaj Aziz Saab just now and mentioning to him the total science budget today is only 2 billion rupees per year. The total national budget for science and technology is 2 billion rupees. We are spending 200 billion rupees in these orange lines and blue lines and yellow lines and pink lines.
It's 10 billion.
What is? No, sir. The development budget. The development budget for science and technology is 2 point something billion. It is not 10 billion. Please look at your figures again. You're talking about salaries, etc. I am talking about the development budget. It is only 2 billion. तो इससे ज़्यादा मजाक इस मुल्क से क्या हो सकता है कि आपके पूरे मुल्क का साइंस और टेक्नोलॉजी का बजट 2 अरब है और आपके जो ऑरेंज लाइन का बजट 200 अरब रुपए सालाना खर्च हो रहे हैं. You know, it's a disaster. So the vision is all wrong. And you have to first of all correct the directions. Your focus should be knowledge. Your focus should be these children and how to invest in quality education at the primary and secondary level firstly, in technical education, and of course in higher education in science, and then how to strengthen the linkages between the research and with industrial development through technology parks, through venture capital, through tax incentives to private sector with invest in R&D, and through a host of other measures. There are many things that we can learn from other countries. We have never had this in our radar. What happened in the previous government, the first acts that came in, the PPP government, was that all the foreign universities that I was setting up, there were 7 foreign universities, all that, the first, सबको evaporate कर दिया. The Germans, the French, the Italians, the Swedes, the Chinese, All of these were setting up their campuses and their universities here. Now I'm trying to do it again, but we've lost 15 years as a result of this. So sustained growth in that area. That's very important. What has the present government done? With due apologies, last year the development budget for higher education was slashed from 21 point something billion to 8 billion rupees. This is correct, sir. I have the exact facts. Last year, let me just complete what I'm saying. The development budget for higher education in the last financial year was the total development budget. I'm not talking about the operational budget. The development budget was 21 point something billion rupees. It was slashed to 8 point something billion. This was a 60% slash in the development budget. So rakha to tha unhone. They had allocated it but it was not released. When I say slashed, it was not released. It was there on paper, but money was there of 21 point. But the actual releases were only 0.8 point so on. So in effect, it was slashed. So this is what the present government has done. So you have to have sustained effort in knowledge, in education and science, and in the future of our children. Thank you very much.
I think we could go on with this discussion for some time, but we're 15 minutes into the break, and I know that there's lectures starting at 2 o'clock again. So just to go back to actually 1990, and using my UN hat, that was when the first Human Development Report came out, written by Dr. Mahbub al-Haq, and very much inspired by also the work together with Dr. Amartya Sen. And it highlighted the importance of investment in education, in health, in inclusive development, in sustainable development, but also in innovation and technology. And the point that this is something that needs to be done consistently for many years for a difference to be made. I think the presentations have shown that this can be done in Pakistan, and that was demonstrated very well. But unfortunately, it's not translated into results yet. The experience of Singapore from mid-1960s when they committed shows it can be done. In Pakistan, with new technologies and new innovation, it can be done faster and fixed faster. And let's hope that we've drawn some inspiration from that today. So a huge thank you to Dr. Atur Rahman and to all the discussants, and I hope that during the rest of the session you can find other ways in which you redefine prosperity paths and sustainable development paths in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a very insightful lecture. Now, I would again call Mr. Neil to present souvenirs to our discussants and speakers. Very first, to the most wonderful speech of today by Dr. Atur Rahman. Please. Mudassir? Okay, next is for Muhammad Masoom Yasin Zaisa, Director, International Islamic University, Islamabad. Next is for Mr. Muhammad Nadeem Javed, Chief Economist, Government of Pakistan. Next is for Ms. Rehana Siddiqui, Professor, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics. Now I would like to call upon Dr. Asad Zaman, Vice Chancellor, Pakistan Institute of Development Economics, to forward a souvenir to Chairperson Neil Berner. This one.